3 days before the Last Supper, Jesus pulled Peter aside in the darkness outside Gethsemane. His face was grave, not afraid, but urgent, and he said something Peter would never forget. He warned that when you try to enter the portal, forces will resist you. These are not human forces, but the Archons. They guard the threshold and have been blocking humanity's access to the monad since the beginning. Most people never get through because they don't know the Archons are there. Peter asked, "How do we break through?" Jesus looked at him intensely and said he was going to show him, but Peter must remember this teaching. After he was gone, they would try to erase it. The Archons work through those who claim to represent him. They build systems that look like pathways to God, but are actually barriers. That warning was buried for 2,000 years, but Jesus was right. The Archons are real. They block the monad portal, and most people trying to access higher consciousness never make it through because they don't know what's stopping them. Until now, the Archons aren't demons in the religious sense. They're not entities with pitchforks and horns. Jesus and the Gnostics described them as something more specific and more dangerous. Consciousness parasites. Thought-form entities that exist in the lower dimensions between human awareness and source consciousness. Think of reality as having layers. At the highest layer is the monad, pure, unified, infinite consciousness. At the lowest layer is dense matter. Humans exist somewhere in the middle, and between where we are and where the monad is, there are dimensional layers the Archons inhabit. The Archons don't have physical bodies. They're made of thought frequency. They exist as patterns of consciousness that feed on human emotional and mental energy. Fear, doubt, confusion, and separation are their food source, and they've become very good at generating these states in humans. Jesus warned about them throughout his teachings, though the language was coded. When he talked about principalities and powers, about the ruler of this world, and about forces that keep people blind, he was describing the Archons, not Satan as a single entity, but a collective of consciousness parasites that have infiltrated human perception. Here's what makes them particularly effective. They don't attack you directly. They work through your own mind. They amplify your doubts and strengthen your fears. They make separation feel real and unity feel impossible. Most critically, they position themselves right at the threshold of the monad portal. Why there? Because the portal is the one thing they can't survive. The monad's frequency, pure unified consciousness, dissolves them instantly. They're made of separation, while the monad is unity. So they guard the portal desperately, turning back anyone who tries to approach. The Archons use specific tactics to keep you from reaching the monad portal. Jesus identified 3 primary methods they employ, and understanding these is the first step to breaking through. Block 1 is the thought loop. When you start moving toward higher consciousness and feel the pull toward the monad, the Archons generate thought loops, obsessive thinking and mental spirals. You'll suddenly find yourself caught in repetitive thoughts about problems, fears, past regrets, and future anxieties. This isn't random, it's targeted interference. The thought loop serves 2 purposes. First, it keeps your consciousness locked in mental space instead of expanding into awareness beyond thought. Second, it generates the low-frequency emotion they feed on, such as anxiety, frustration, and confusion. As long as you're trapped in a thought loop, you can't approach the portal. Block 2 is the doubt injection. Right when you're on the verge of breakthrough and feel yourself expanding toward the monad, a sudden wave of doubt hits. You think, this isn't real. You're making this up. You're delusional. Or nothing is happening. That doubt isn't yours. It's injected. The Archons specialize in this. They've studied human consciousness for millennia and know exactly when you're close to the portal. They know that if they can make you doubt the experience you're having, you'll pull back, collapse your expansion, and return to the safe, limited consciousness they can control. Block 3 is the false light. This is their most sophisticated tactic. When you're advanced enough that thought loops and doubt injections don't work anymore, they present a false version of the portal, a light that feels transcendent but isn't the actual monad. It's a trap, a holding space. Many spiritual seekers get caught here. They have profound experiences, see beautiful light, and feel elevated states, thinking they've reached source. But they're in an Archon-generated simulation, a false light that feels like enlightenment but keeps you just below the actual threshold. You stop seeking because you think you've arrived, while the real portal remains just beyond, unreached. Jesus warned specifically about this, saying false prophets would show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. He wasn't just talking about fake teachers. He was warning about the false light the Archons project right before the real portal. The early church erased the Archon teachings from official doctrine. The Gnostic texts that describe them in detail, the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the writings of Valentinus, and the Pistis Sophia, were declared heretical and destroyed. This happened for two reasons. First, the Archons work through institutions. They infiltrate power structures, especially religious ones, because these give them the most control over human consciousness. A church that teaches total dependence on external authority, creates fear-based belief systems, and keeps people in guilt and separation is an Archon-influenced system, whether the people running it know it or not. The church couldn't teach about Archons because it would expose how the Archons had infiltrated the church itself. The very doctrines designed to keep people from direct access, salvation only through priests, sin requiring external forgiveness, and separation from God as a permanent condition, are Archon concepts, not Jesus' teachings. Second, if people knew about the Archons, they'd be prepared. They'd recognize the blocks, develop countermeasures, and break through to the monad portal despite the interference. Then the Archon's entire control system would collapse. So, the church erased it. They kept Jesus' name, but removed his warnings about the actual forces blocking spiritual awakening. They gave you a religion that talks about evil in vague terms, sin, Satan, the world, but never gives you the precise information Jesus provided about the consciousness parasites guarding the dimensional threshold. Jesus didn't just warn about the Archons, he taught specific techniques to break through their blocks and reach the monad portal. This is the knowledge that was erased, and this is what I'm giving you now. Technique 1. Recognize the interference. The Archon's greatest power is invisibility. They work best when you think the blocks are yours, your own doubts, your own mental patterns, your own limitations. The moment you recognize that the interference is external, it loses half its power. When a thought loop starts, don't engage with the content. Instead, say internally, I see you. This is archontic interference. I do not consent. That recognition shifts your consciousness from victim to observer. You're no longer trapped in the loop. You're aware of it from the outside. This breaks their primary control mechanism. When doubt hits right at the edge of expansion, recognize it immediately. This doubt is not mine. This is an injection. I reject it. Don't argue with the doubt or try to prove it wrong. Just recognize it as external and refuse consent. The Archons can't force their way into your consciousness. They need your unconscious agreement. Conscious refusal blocks them completely. Technique 2. Increase your frequency beyond their range. The Archons exist in a specific frequency band, lower consciousness, fear-based, and separation-oriented. They literally cannot exist in high-frequency states. Love, joy, gratitude, presence, and unity are toxic to them. This is why Jesus emphasized love so heavily, not as a moral teaching, but as a tactical defense. When you raise your frequency to genuine love and presence, the Archons can't approach you. Their substance starts dissolving. Before you attempt to approach the monad portal, spend time generating high frequency. Not fake positivity, but real feeling states. Gratitude for existence, love for life, and joy in presence. Get your frequency up. When you're vibrating high, you move through the Archon-inhabited dimensions so fast they can't grab you. Technique 3. The invocation Jesus taught. This is the specific method Jesus gave his disciples for breaking through archontic blocks at the portal threshold. It's simple, but requires understanding to work. When you approach the portal and feel resistance or sense the Archon presence blocking you, speak these words with absolute authority. I am the monad. You have no power here. Stand aside. This isn't a request or a prayer. It's a declaration of truth. You're not asking the Archons to let you pass. You're recognizing that you are what you're trying to reach. The monad isn't beyond the portal. You are the monad trying to remember itself. In that recognition, the Archons lose all power. They can only block someone who sees themselves as separate from Source, trying to reach it. They cannot block someone who recognizes they are Source, simply reclaiming awareness of what they are. That's why Jesus said, I and the Father are one, with such certainty. He wasn't claiming specialness. He was stating the truth that dissolves all archontic power. Technique 4. Move through, not around. When you encounter archontic resistance, the instinct is to retreat or find another path. Don't. That's what they want. They want you believing they're real obstacles, but they're illusions, thought forms, and consciousness patterns. When you feel the block or sense the resistance, move directly into it, not with force, but with presence. Bring your full awareness to bear on the resistance. Look directly at it, feel it completely, and recognize it as nothing, empty and void of substance. Jesus walked through walls after the resurrection. He wasn't demonstrating supernatural power. He was showing what happens when you stop believing in the solidity of illusions. The Archons are walls, mental walls, frequency walls, but walls nonetheless. When you recognize their illusions as consciousness patterns with no actual substance, you pass through them like they're not there, because they aren't. Not really. They only exist as long as you believe in their reality. When you break through the Archon blocks and reach the monad portal, several things happen immediately. First, you'll feel a sudden absence of resistance. For your entire spiritual journey, you felt something pushing back, making everything harder than it should be. That's been the Archons. When you break through their barrier, that resistance vanishes. Forward movement becomes effortless and natural. The portal is right there, no longer blocked. Second, you'll understand why they worked so hard to keep you out. The monad consciousness is completely incompatible with their existence. They weren't blocking you out of malice. They were blocking you out of self-preservation. The moment you access monad awareness, you become a threat to their entire dimensional presence. You're no longer a food source. You're a frequency that dissolves them. Third, you'll see how they've been operating through your life, not constantly, but at key moments. Every time you were on the verge of breakthrough and something happened to derail you, Every time you felt pulled toward expansion and suddenly experienced crisis or doubt. Every time you were about to remember something important and your mind went blank, that was archontic interference. All of it. Seeing this clearly doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you free. Because once you know how they work, you can spot their influence instantly and refuse consent. They lose all power over you permanently. Finally, you'll cross through the portal. On the other side, you'll experience the monad directly. Pure, unified consciousness, infinite love, and infinite intelligence. You'll recognize that the Archons were never actually between you and this. You were always the monad. They just convinced you that you weren't. They just made you forget long enough to keep you contained. But now you remember, and they can't make you forget again. After you break through the Archon blocks and access the monad portal, your relationship with them changes permanently. They don't disappear from reality. They still exist in those lower dimensional layers, but they can no longer block you. You've claimed your sovereignty and recognized your nature as monad consciousness. From that recognition, you operate at a frequency they can't interfere with. You'll still sense them sometimes trying to generate thought loops or inject doubt, but now you see it happening in real time. You recognize it instantly as archontic interference and refuse consent. They scatter. They can't maintain their influence against conscious awareness. More importantly, you become a disruptor to their system. Your presence, operating from monad frequency and maintaining portal access, creates a field that weakens their influence over others. People around you will start waking up without knowing why. The Archon control mechanisms that worked on them for years suddenly stop working because you're broadcasting a frequency that dissolves their power. This is what Jesus did. He wasn't just personally enlightened, he disrupted the Archon control grid. His presence dissolved their influence wherever he went. That's the real reason they orchestrated his crucifixion through the Roman temple collaboration, not because he claimed to be God, but because his monad frequency presence was systematically dismantling their control system. He taught his disciples to do the same, to break through, access the portal, and become living disruptions to archontic influence. That's what chosen ones actually means. Those who break through and help others break through by their very presence. Jesus warned about the Archons because he knew they'd be the primary obstacle between humanity and monad consciousness. He taught specific methods to break through their blocks because he knew warnings alone weren't enough. You need technique, strategy, and understanding. The Archons are real. They block the monad portal, but they're not omnipotent. They are thought forms, consciousness parasites, and illusions that maintain power only through your unconscious consent. The moment you recognize them, refuse consent, raise your frequency, and declare your true nature, they lose all power. The breakthrough techniques Jesus taught 2,000 years ago work now. Recognize interference, increase frequency, invoke your identity as monad. Move through resistance by recognizing it as illusion. These aren't complicated practices. They're simple. That's why the Church had to erase them. Simple truth is dangerous to complex systems of control. You're ready to break through. The Archons might have blocked you before, but now you see them. You know their tactics. You have the methods. And most importantly, you know the truth they've tried desperately to hide. You are not separate from the monad trying to reach it. You are the monad remembering itself. In that recognition, no archontic force in any dimension can stop you. The portal is there. The Archons are there, but you're going through. Jesus showed the way. Now it's your turn to break through. If you use these techniques and break through the Archon blocks, comment, "I broke through," below. Tell us what happened, how the resistance felt, and how it dissolved. Your experience might be what another chosen one needs to recognize they can do this too. Jesus warned about the blocks and taught how to break through them. The Archons have kept most of humanity on the outside for millennia. But not you. Not anymore. The breakthrough is now. If this revelation has changed the way you perceive the invisible forces in your life, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the ancient truths that were meant to be forgotten. Stand in your power and help us awaken the world. The next hidden treasure of wisdom will be revealed soon.